Carey is not with us tonight. He may be coming in late. He's stuck in travel as of right now, so I will be filling in for him until he either shows or we end this meeting. So, with that, roll call, please.
Dickman here.
Grillo here.
Gavich here.
Kuzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Great. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Dickman will make a motion and we approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2016 meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Grillo aye.
Gavich, aye.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Seifert aye.
Chandler aye.
And now we will dispense it over to Carrie for significant common council actions.
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving a conditional use permit for the property at 8,000 South Market Street, allowing for the development of senior housing. An ordinance approving an amendment to the conditional use permit for the properties at 9,000 and 9,100 South Nicholson Road for the operation of a private indoor recreation facility. A resolution designating the Oak Creek Civic Center Plaza as Richard Bolander Plaza. And the council concurred with the mayor's appointment of Andrew Vickers as city administrator. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. We're going to open it tonight. We have a sign appeal hearing for the property at 7955 South Main Street. So with that, I will turn it over to Pete.
Thank you. I'll just read the public hearing notice into the record. City of Oak Creek noticed a public hearing before the Plan Commission. Public hearing for a sign appeal will be held Tuesday, September 27th, 2016 at 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall Common Council Chambers, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 53154. The appellant is Nikki Sachet. Tax key number 813-9053. Property is located at 7979 South Main Street. This is to request a variance from section 17.0334, which states that the following sign regulations as part of the general development plan and regulating plan. 1. Wall sign shall not exceed 15% of the retail floor height. 2. Only one wall sign or 1 to 2 blade signs are permitted on entry facades. 3. Eye-level signs are limited to one sign per 12 linear feet of tenant space frontage on entry facade. 4. Eye-level signs shall not exceed 10% of the glazing with text height limited to 5% of the storefront. In addition, the adopted master plan sign plan limits wall signs to a maximum of 35 square feet in area. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install one 45 square foot wall sign on the north and east facade, one blade sign on the north and east facade, and 10 eye-level signs not to exceed 10% of the glazing and have text height less than 5% of the storefront on the north, east, and west facades for the tenant space located at 7959 South Main Street. Zoning of the property, DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 8th day of September 2016. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Signed, Mayor Steve Scafidi, Chairman. At this point, this public hearing is open. Anyone who wishes to make a comment regarding the subject of the hearing, to please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and proceed to address the commission with their comments. At this point, the public hearing is now open.
Great, thank you. We will make 3 calls for the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium, name and address for the record, and state your case. So, first call. Second call on public hearing. Third and final call for anybody wishing to speak on the subject of the sign appeal. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. I'm going to suspend it right now, and we're just going to move to 5A for a certified survey map to appease one of our residents who has come here for that. And then we'll go right back to the sign appeal.
Mr. Chairman, it's 5B on the
Oh,
agenda.
I'm sorry,
5B,
5B.
yeah.
So if you guys would be so kind to go to 5B. Gary?
Request is for a certified survey map for the properties at 9203 South 8th, should be Avenue, 9202 South 8th Avenue, pardon me. 9203, 9209, and 9213 South 7th Avenue. These are the properties that are highlighted in red on the screen right now. The property at 9202 South 8th Avenue is currently developed with a duplex and an outbuilding. The proposed CSM would combine all the lots into one. There are no plans at this time for future development. The utility has made a comment that there is no water or sewer service on the 7th Avenue side. 7th Avenue is actually not improved. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Randy and Lori Hunt for the properties at 9202 South 8th Avenue and 9203, 9209, and 9213 South 7th Avenue be approved, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. At this time, I will open it up to the council for any questions, concerns, comments. Fred?
Do we have the applicant here for this? Would you step up to the podium?
Yes, sir.
Name and address, please.
Name?
Randy Hunt, 9443 Jasmine Court, Sturtevant, Wisconsin.
Can you explain why you want to combine these 4 lots into one?
We were looking to add on to the back of the garage, the outbuilding, and I assume that we can't do that unless we have them combined.
You need to do all 4 lots to do that?
I don't think so, but I was just thinking that would also put them, we just get one bill per year for the whole properties that way.
It just seemed like, you'd want to keep some of those lots separate rather than combine them all. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yeah.
This is in an area that historically they have very old parcels. And when I mean old, I mean they were divided in the 20s, which is why these parcels are so small. And again, 7th Avenue is not improved at this time. There is no road there. There's a reservation for a road there. There's a publicly mapped street there. But development on those properties at this time would be difficult, if not next to impossible, with there being no access there. So combining these properties is not necessarily an issue as far as planning is concerned, which is why we recommended approval. A lot of these lots have actually been combined over the years because of their small size. It allows a little bit more flexibility for the owners to develop their properties in a way that makes logical sense.
Good, Fred. Anyone else? Wally?
I don't have anything, actually major comments. I kind of agree with Fred. Let's see, these lots are small. I know, Kerry, and plus they're basically landlocked except for coming in off of 8th Avenue, correct? At the present time.
At this time, that is correct.
So the idea of them building at some future time is very unlikely unless their money is spent to improve or put through 7th Avenue. But I still think that I myself, if I were doing it, and I'm not, I agree that I would have not combined them all. I would have just kept a lot that they could expand their garage back or back in there and just put 2 of the lots together so that if they have to do something at a later date, they don't have to come back in here again.
Well, I can also speak to the fact that if they were to only combine the lot with the existing residence on it with the lot that's directly behind them,
Still
it wouldn't
not-
meet current setback requirements. So they'd have to at least combine 3 of the lots.
Okay, and so
And
that would
then
only
at that
leave the
point,
one.
you have 1 left.
Okay, agreed.
Seems to make sense to me.
Okay, seeing nothing, we'll move for a motion.
Dickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Randy and Lori Hunt for the properties at 9202 South 8th Avenue and 9203, 9209, 9213 South 7th Avenue be approved with the following 2 conditions. For one, that all easements are shown and clearly labeled on the map prior to recording. And number 2, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Right, thank you, good luck. Now we'll return back to 5A and sign appeal. I will open that up to the council as soon as you get your packets ready for questions or concerns, comments. Jocelyn, go ahead.
I have a question for the applicant.
Good evening, Scott Filio, 27 Court Street.
Okay, can you provide a little more information on why so many signs?
In regard to the building or the windows?
The windows.
So I believe we have allocated 10 signs, the largest of the signs being on the east elevation. That sign is, the purpose of that sign is to block the image of the patient while they're in the chair.
Is that the family?
Correct.
Okay.
The other signs on the door represent some information on the practice and the doctors, which is part of the state requirement. The other signs represent the practice name for dental, and then some representing graphics of what occurs inside being a dental office.
And what are the purposes of the new smiles, welcome, big smiles inside, keep on smiling?
So those
Signs,
are,
is it covering up something similar to the family?
no, those are graphics just to represent, dental usage, representing what goes on inside the practice.
And then another question specific to Carrie. I don't remember in our packet that this door sign was one of the signs listed. We got the wall signs, blade signs, eye-level signs.
Sure,
I may have missed
I can
it.
answer that question.
Oh, okay.
When they first proposed the plan sign at the last commission that I was at, it was for the wall signs and the blade signs. There were no eye-level signs proposed at that time. And so at that meeting, if you recall, the plan commission approved of one entry-level facade wall sign and one entry-level blade sign. And at the end of the meeting, the applicant asked if, what the opinions was if, coming back for a sign appeal. And so the mayor made a comment that, go for it and, we'll discuss it at a later date. So that's why we're here. Well, between that time, the applicant had some graphic eye-level signs that they wanted to propose. Well, when I reviewed it before, I told them, well, according to the DTS MUPDD sign regulations, you're only allowed so many eye-level signs, one per every 12 linear feet of frontage on your entry side. And so, there's a total of 10, but there are essentially 6 on the entry-level side, which is in your packet that shows the top level. I'll bring that up. So here is on the east side, and then there's a corner where the entry side is, they refer to as corner, but it's really just like a recessed entrance. And so they're allowed to have a maximum of 4 on that elevation based on the linear frontage. And right now they're asking for 6. So in your report, I tried to give a laundry list, lack of a better explanation, of the number of variances that would be requested. So, when we talked through the public hearing, I said there'll be variance that would allow the following. It was a long list. Well, I broke it out in your packet and to say, okay, if you want to give a variance for 6 signs, you have to have a variance for the one on the back of the building or the west elevation, because that's not an entry facade. And same with the north facing, there should be no eye-level signs on that side as well. So this is new from the last time. And so I suspect a lot of our conversation will be focused on the eye-level signs more so than the wall sign and the blade sign. I think there was, if I recall the conversation last month, it seemed that there wasn't a lot of concern with that north elevation. Maybe I'm wrong. Definitely we can discuss that as well tonight. But there is a list of variances that will be required, and I can read that so the people in the audience understand exactly, specifically what I'm talking about. And so if the Plan Commission were to be comfortable with what is being presented tonight, the following variances would be granted. You could wrap it up as, 1 through 7. 1, allow the installation of one 45-square-foot wall sign on both the north and east elevations of the building. If we require the master sign plan that Blair Williams, the owner of the property, requested to be maximum 35. So not only are they asking for non-entry, but they're also asking the sign to be bigger than what the landlord originally agreed to. 2, allow the installation of a 24-inch by 36-inch blade sign on both the north and east elevation of the building. 3, allow the installation of 3 eye-level signs on the north elevation of the building. Allow the installation of 1 eye-level sign on the west elevation of the building. 5, allow the installation of 6 eye-level signs on the east elevation of the building. Allow a 30.7 square foot eye-level sign on the east elevation. That's that family photo that you see up on the left-hand side on the east facing. That actually takes up 42% of the glazing on that side of the glass. We only allow 10% of the window to be covered in opaque signage. And then also on the corner elevation, there's actually 3 signs right there on the same elevation. When you add up the sum of those 3 signs, 14.3% of the glazing on that section of glass is covered, which exceeds the 10% rule. So those are things you need to consider when granting a variance. One thing I just want to mention, that variances go with the tenant space, not with the user. So, if Forward Dental were to be successful, need a bigger location, the next tenant would have the same ability to put the same number size on the glazing as well. So that just encapsulates the variances that are being requested for tonight. And it's up to the Plan Commission, as the way that we have the Drexel Town Square rules written, that, anytime there's signage in any of the tenant spaces, that it gets reviewed by this board. And so that's why tonight you have an extra wall sign, an extra blade sign, and then you have the extra eye level signs before you tonight.
Thank you, Pete, and it's a good explanation, and again, we put some heavy glazing requirements on these buildings, and this is kind of an unforeseen circumstance of what happens when a tenant comes in and needs to block that view from the glass that we intended to put in. So I'm still going to let you guys chime in on this, but if I can suggest anything, maybe we take these, as Pete said, we break down the wall signs, the blade signs, get them out of the way so we know where we're sitting with that part, and then maybe attack the thing. Otherwise, I think we'll be all over the board here. So just a suggestion. You don't have to take it. So, Fred?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of all of those eye signs, or eye level. I think we're just kind of junking up the windows and doing a lot of advertising on the outside, and I don't like it. It just does not appeal to me to look nice. I can see that other signs, but putting half a dozen or a dozen of these eye-level signs on the windows is just not right.
Fred? Wally?
Okay, I agree with Fred. I am really concerned with what we've listed here as the family photo eye level sign, which covers 30.7 square feet. According to them, the applicant is saying he wants to use that because he wants to protect the privacy of patients in the dental hygiene space. Well, to me, that's not what a sign on the window is for. You put partitions in the building. You can make adjustments within the building if you don't want to have people being seen from outside, okay? I'm concerned with the size of it. I'm concerned of why they want to have it there. And that's my feeling. And I agree with Fred that I think there's just too many of the other signs.
There was just a depiction brought up on the screen that helps explain some of that reasoning. So the way the hygiene is set up in the operatories, the first hygiene, number 1, happens to be adjacent to the long linear section of glazing. So when the patient's in the chair, they're exposed to that one area that's kind of superimposed in red. So the other operatories further into the practice do not get exposure from the public as they walk by the sidewalk. And so for the patient's comfort level and the patient sitting in the chair and the people walking by, the window skin was been proposed on that
Okay,
same
but that's
section.
how you laid this out. You didn't have to lay it out that way, so it was sitting out in the open like that, That's a design feature that you could have handled in other ways.
Yeah, but I think at the time of the layout, we weren't privy to the stipulations on the window skins, and the sign ordinance hadn't been implemented. That's all been discovered just within the last month.
Can I just ask from staff on the sign ordinances, is this the last month that this has been out there, or?
No, the sign ordinance was adopted with the Drexel Town Square mixed-use plan development. Now, did the landlord share with the tenant the rules and regulations? That I don't know.
Okay.
So, I mean, we've been having difficulty with many tenants so far at this, with the communication between what is allowed and not allowed for signage. So, short answer to your question is no, this has been on the books since the beginning.
Yeah, the pamphlet we got from the developer implemented that window skins were allowed in the center.
What are any not window skins, but any application to the windows permitted?
Yes. You can have one eye-level sign per 12 linear feet of frontage, and there is approximately 49 feet of frontage on the entry side. So they could have up to 4 eye-level signs. They cannot cover up more than 10% of the glazing. They can't make more than 10% of the window opaque. So for the one on the corner, the sign company had a little bit of a misunderstanding of what meant. They thought that long as each sign was less than 10%, they were okay, not realizing that it's 10% of all the window spaces that we're counting. So that way, otherwise you could have many 10% signs on a window and cover up 40-50% of the sign because you decided to put it all in one area. That is the concern. So that's why there would have to be a variance that allow the glazing on that corner elevation to exceed the 10%. It's 14.3% covered with what's being proposed right now. The applicant could potentially shrink the New Smiles Welcome sign, so that way the sum of the New Smiles Welcome, the phone number and web address, and the size of the hours of operation, I'm assuming that's going to be on that window there, the sum of those 3 skins don't exceed 10%. As for like the forward dental signs, those are all less than 10% or very close. But yeah, it's the big one for the privacy concern, and then for the New Smiles Welcome. One thing, just add out, the New Smiles Welcome sign is 40 inches in height. And also the big Smiles circle is 30 inches in height. If you recall our wall sign requirements, say 25 inches. So these dots are actually going to be even taller than the actual forward dental that's going to be on the wall. They're permanent channel letter signs. Just to give you a little scope of the size. So those are all things that have to be taken into consideration. And this is not going to be the only tenant in this development that's going to want to put eye-level signs on there. In fact, we're going to be talking later tonight about window skins on vacant tenant spaces, and what is preferred, to have a window skin, soap, newspaper, whatever, or just an empty tenant space. That's going to be later tonight for discussion. However, for this particular case, I did lay out those 7 variances that would be required. I mean, you'd wrap it up as one big variance, but those would be the 7 specifics, so that way you can address each of those things that are being proposed tonight.
Else? I guess I'll weigh in with my opinion. First of all, I'm going to comment on the blade signs and the 2 facade signs. We kind of covered those before, and as Pete said earlier, I really don't have a lot of problems with blade signs or the facade signs, as long as they fit that height. It's not picking me up. Okay. Again, I'm gonna take it piece by piece. I don't have a lot of problems with the blade signs. I'm okay with the facade signs as long as they fit our Drexel Town Square scope. What is that, 25.2 or something like that?
Yeah, 25.2 inches. Yeah.
Okay. So from that perspective, I'm fine. It is a lot of signage along the front of this. I'm going to start with the family photo that's used to block that patient. I'm not here to bark about design or what have you, what you did or didn't know. The fact is we are where we are. The place is built, it's designed this way, it's laid out this way. There's efficiencies that go into this and where they're putting it. We have to somehow opaque them windows one way or another. You cannot have somebody with their mouth hanging open and people walking along that sidewalk. We have to be common sense about this. So we have to come up with a resolution with that window. So we either have to say, as Pete said, allow them to put newspaper in it, allow them to put this picture in, or get that opaque black thing that nobody can see into. So we got to figure out what's the most attractive thing. Quite frankly, pretty attractive people in that picture. I'd rather look at that. So from my point of view, when it comes to that particular window, we're going to have to deal with this on a case-by-case basis. Because again, as we constructed these tenant spots, the time we put it in the glazing requirements, we had no idea what use was going in here. Whether it was going to be a shoe store, a dental clinic, you name it. So we're going to have many different uses. And as these tenant spots change, it won't be permanent. As Pete said, it's going to go with it. So we got a good decision. We have a hard decision to make here tonight. Whatever we do sticks with this spot.
I ask for clarification because the way you phrased it, the variance doesn't go with the tenant. It goes
with the property.
It goes with the property.
Right, so-
Okay, it just made it sound like if Forward Dental were to go, then that sign would leave with them.
No.
That wouldn't be the case. It would be the next one.
I'm sorry
Okay.
if I said that incorrectly. Thanks for
It-
correcting me, Pete. But again, that is going to be a decision. So again, I'm willing to compromise because that'll, as far as I'm concerned, we have to opaque that patient area for sure. As far as the other ones go, they got a corner spot. They're covering a lot of space. I can see where they want something to break it up. I do think the new smile signs, the dots are a little big, as Pete pointed out to us. I don't have a lot of angst on the Forward Dental on the east-facing side. But again, I think we have to shrink that new smile sign in. As Pete mentioned, I guess everything has to shrink within that 10% because I'm not saying it's a precedent, but we're going to have tenant spots with all this glazing going up and down here. We got to kind of come to a consensus as to how we're going to handle these going forward. Pete mentioned as these get rented out, we're going to be going through all this with different glass. We have another one tonight. So I guess I'd like to hear from you now that you heard my opinion. What's the best way to opaque that patient area? And let's attack that compromise first. Dawn?
A couple things before I get your opinion. I really think that this being the first one, we need to stick to the parameters that we've set. And the wall sign is bigger already, and then there's a second wall sign and the blade sign. I think there are other ways to mask that with blinds from the inside, or St. Mary's Hospital has movable partitions to block it. I really don't think that that's to be able to put something on the wall. I mean, there's other options than to put this picture of this family. I also think then by putting a picture of the family, whatever family is chosen, I think that sets a precedence. So I really would like to stay away from that. As well as any of these wall signs, for sure under the 10%. And any of these on the windows, the new smile signs, we need to stick to the rules that we've established where this has got them every couple of feet. There's another sign on the wall, or on the window, I should say. So that's kind of my thought. If now what your thoughts are behind it.
Well, we do have shades in the windows. So if that was the requirement that you'd want, the shade would be down pretty much all the time. So we could pull the shade down and leave it down and omit that sign if that helps form the decision for approval.
And again, I mean, shades crossed my mind too, but you're basically going to have a blacked out window all the time. And you're going to block all the natural sunlight, which, whether it means anything or not, you're just going to burn your lights more and more. They're going to be on anyways. But for what it's worth, I'd actually rather see the sign. As far as which family you want to see there, I don't know if you want the Cleavers there or what you want there, but maybe they can change the sign seasonally and put Christmas hats on them or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because.
How about the planning commission members being on there? Would you like that?
You don't want my picture up there. I'm not very photogenic.
I'm glad you brought up the content because by law, we cannot regulate the content. Right now, they are showing a family, but they could put anything in there as long as it's not obscene or indecent. So, I mean, right now they're showing this, but right now he could just have, white rectangles and you guys would have to make a decision. I mean, I think the applicant was trying its best to illustrate what it is that you will see right now, but the next tenant, what will it be? So just want to let you know, we can regulate, size, number, location, but we cannot regulate content. So when you talk about, what's it going to look like, that's not for us to have any authority over. Just wanted to
Thank you,
make
Pete.
that comment.
But again, I guess I'm just not in favor of blanking out that window, whether it's by shades or even taking a partition or, like one of them rolling curtains they have in hospitals. It's going to sit there all the time because not only can you see the first patient, you can see all the patients. So we really have to figure out what we're going to do with that one spot. I think that's the biggest thing for me. The other ones, I think we can shrink away or do without a couple. We can find a easy compromise there, but I think as a unit, we really have to consider the use of this tenant space and realize that whatever we're doing is going to stay with this property. Now, it's not to say if Forward Dental decides to go for whatever reason, that the next tenant may even want it. They'll have the right to it, but it doesn't mean they're going to use it. It could be a clothing store that wants to use the window space. So keep in mind, I guess I'm just kind of asking you to keep kind of an open mind on that opaque area because we're kind of at a crossroads here where I think it's essential we got to have something there.
Dan, could I ask Pete a question?
Go ahead.
This particular item that we're talking about, could it be used for pure advertising? Say that they left, somebody else came in, they could use that as another advertising supplement?
Yes, they would be allowed to have a 30.7 square foot window eye level sign on the building,
Okay.
on the
See,
glazing.
That's the part I'm concerned with, yeah.
Well, and I understand your concern. I get it. And unfortunately, this is where we are when we construct things of this nature with this type of glazing and we don't know the use ahead of time. It's pretty easy when somebody comes and builds a standalone building like we see across the street and they have a corporate model as to what they're going to use. It's very easy to predict what's going to be there. Of course, when we put these tenant spaces in, this just as easily could have been a women's clothing store that wanted to put mannequins in the window and, wouldn't have needed to opaque anything. So again, we don't know what it's going to be in the future. Hopefully it's going to be Forward Dentistry for a long, long time. And they're successful and they hold a tenant space. We don't have a problem with it. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you that. All I know is I definitely think we have a problem with them conducting business because I would not want to be sitting in that dental chair with everybody coming by taking a look at me. So I think as a commission, we really have to come to a consensus on this one way or another.
If I may add a little bit,
Yes.
I was just going to say that we've used this same type of window skin with a graphic. It's semi-perforated, and it provides, light to penetrate through it. It's not a solid material, and we've used this in the same circumstance, and we had this arrangement, and it provides comfort level, I think, as you said, both for the patient in the chair and then the public walking by. There is some, uncertainty or comfort level for the people walking by as they might witness, an operatory going on. So it's helpful. And the other thing I'd like to add is if it helps the decision, we could alter or omit some of the other graphics in appeasement to allow some this graphic.
Sure, and tonight, that is, there are two things for that east elevation that are being considered. One, do you allow more than the 4, which would be allowed, and let them have the 6? So if that's the one concern, that you have to talk about. 2 is the eye level sign that is going to cover 42%, which is that family picture on the left-hand side of your screen, and then also on that corner elevation is 14.3%. So, there's a couple of things that have to be considered for just this elevation alone. Is the number of signs, and as the applicant said, they may reduce the number to 4. That would be in compliance with the DTS sign regulations. And then if they were to, it's up to the commission whether or not to grant that variance to allow for a 30.7 square foot. I don't know if the applicant would be open to shrinking that, so it's not 42%. I don't know what number would be comfortable with either the applicant or the commission, because it's 10% is the rule, so anything that goes above it is going to be the discretion of the commission and the applicant. So I don't know if it's easier to maybe tackle, instead of the size issue, the number issue first. Should there be 6 or should there only be 4? And then that may help determine, the next step. All right, do we allow the corner elevation to have more than 10% coverage? Do we allow the east elevation to have an area that has more than 42% coverage? If we can get to agreement there, then we can talk to the west side. Should there be an eye level sign on the west elevation? That one does meet the 10% rule. So that's not an issue of size, it's the issue of number on a non-entry facade. Same thing with the north elevation. There's 3 signs. That's acceptable, a number based on the frontage. However, again, not an entrance sign, so it needs a variance to allow those 3 signs on that north elevation. So you're going to have to determine whether or not non-entry sides warrant a variance to allow signage, and then we talk about number on the entry side.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to go in reverse
No.
order, because I think you're tackling the hardest one first.
I think so. I think so.
May want to discuss the west elevation first. Is that acceptable or not?
I think it's a good suggestion, so.
And we can check that off the list of 7 variances, because right now, if I understand you correctly, and the commission, correct me any moment, variance 1 and 2, dealing with the blade signs and the wall signs, would be acceptable.
Well, that was my opinion.
That was just your comment. Okay.
I don't know. It depends on these other signs. So I don't know the answer to that from my perspective.
Right, and from my perspective, if we approve those 2, I think then they need to meet all the other rules. They got to go down to 10% and remove them on the west side, and, they'll have a bigger sign than we even should allow, right? We're going to have a variance on the wall sign because it's going to be bigger.
Well, this is the quirkiness of this whole situation, is that the master sign was approved by the landlord, limiting it to 35, but prior, at that night, that size limit was approved, and Forward Dental submitted with the 45 square foot. So size-wise, from the DTS perspective, it meets the size requirement. It met the height, met the size. The only issue was it had the number, because you had on the non-entry side.
Right.
And so, but as for
So
size.
we doubled it.
Yes,
Wall
but as for size-wise, it was in
Right,
conformance
okay,
with
I'm sorry.
DTS.
I
I just wanted to,
misspoke.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of an overlap here of,
But they have 2 versus 1 that they
Correct.
should have. So we've doubled that already.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're asking for so much more of the glazing signage.
yes.
That I would like to see what it would look like if they held to the rules that we have in place. What does the 10% look like? It makes that, the new Smiles Welcome much smaller, right? Because they'll have to meet the 10% with the website and the door.
Right, if the applicant were to reduce the number of signs, like underneath the new Smiles Welcome, there's a phone number and web address. If somehow, if you were to remove that and maybe incorporate it into the door sign,
Right.
that would take off some square footage, and then the new Smiles Welcome, we can work with the applicant to get it so that way, the new smile sign and the door sign don't cover more than 10%. I mean, it's at 14% right now, so there's going to be some shrinkage. I think I was just doing a little back of the envelope math, that 40-inch went down to 17. You know, then in keeping the other two signs, that would get you that 10%. But I mean, there's other ways I think you
Yep.
can manipulate those three different signs to
Yep.
hit that 10%.
If I could make a suggestion, we're willing to omit the new Smiles Welcome on the east face corner and the new Smile, Keep on Smiling sign from the same east elevation. Those two would be omitted from the application.
Facing side.
East facing. So the large new Smiles Welcome circle would be omitted, and the Keep on Smiling graphic, those two would be omitted. And then, the larger one, it's part of a HIPAA requirement, so would prefer to keep that one if we could, to protect the patient.
I just have a quick question in regards to the Forward Dental sign or on the window.
Yes.
Isn't the wall sign right diagonal to that, the Forward Dental wall sign?
I believe it
'Cause
is.
it's on the
It will-
same
it will-
side.
Yeah, it'll be on the same side. So here is the east elevation. Keep in mind that, Drexel Town Square, when it was designed, it decided, it had a multi-layered sign level. You had your main sign, then you had your pedestrian signs. So so you had the wall, you had the blade, and then you have your, glazing or signs to have those different levels of scale. So if you're walking down the block, you see the blade sign. If you're driving on the street, you see the wall sign. And if you happen to be just a pedestrian, you'd see it at your eye level. So there was thought put into place of having these different level signs. So yeah, on the surface, I can see what you're saying. You got Forward Dental, a 45 square foot sign, and underneath you
And a
have
blade sign,
a
and then a
8 foot
window.
square foot sign. Why is that? But if you go, you haven't had a chance probably to walk down Main Street yet. It's still blocked. But if you walk down to Bel Air, there's those different levels of signage where, you're walking, you're driving, you have those different levels. So
We have a blade sign on that same side, which you should see walking, which is,
Right underneath.
so I'm just trying to understand the need for the additional Forward Dental signs that are on the windows.
I
Because
understand
on
what you're
each-
saying. To help Scott out, he did propose striking out Keep on Smiling and the new Smiles Welcome sign. He would be allowed to have 4 eye-level signs stretched out along his linear frontage, which would be, the family one, the Forward Dental, and the door sign and the little, the
Phone number.
phone number and web address. So he would be in compliant with the number. So even if, by him proposing to reduce those down to 4 signs, he could put an eye-level sign there. He could make it the Keep on Smiling. He could make it Forward Dental, because again, we can't regulate necessarily the content.
They're
If
still
he
too
wants,
big.
no, the Forward Dental is not too big. The only
it's
one that's
not.
too big is on the big family
The
picture.
family. Okay,
And on the
okay.
corner elevation, since he has 3 signs on one section of glazing, I added up those 3 signs and it came out to be above the 10%. If you look at the signs individually, they're less, but we don't want to have people going, oh, well, this is less, this is only 10%, this is 10%, and then we cover up a whole section of glazing with that. So if the commission's comfortable with the 4, that's what he's allowed to have. Then what remains is, do you allow a variance to let the applicant cover 14.3% on that corner elevation and the 42% on the privacy window cling on the left-hand side?
So just to level set everyone, which side are we starting with? I just had that question.
We're on
before
the,
making
as long as we're here, we're on the east.
The east, okay.
Okay, so what's proposed right now is the family photo, which is a variance because it's over at 42. And then the Keep on Smiling sign would be out. The Forward Dental sign would stay. The new Smiles Welcome would go. Below that, the phone number and web address would stay. And then the information on the door would stay. keep in mind that forward dental sign, okay, is allowed. It could become a keep smiling sign. It could be something else. We ain't worried about the content. It's just a sign. So it's his choice if he wants to repeat forward dental or he wants to have keep smiling or whatever the deal is. So that's what we're looking for on the east.
Before we leave the east,
Yeah.
we have no control on the content of that large area.
No, we've gone over that. We do
Okay.
not. As long as it's not obscene. So they can have snowflakes, whatever they
Or an
want.
ad.
Their ad, yeah.
Again, we don't. What they're proposing is a family. We can take them at their word that they're going to have this smiling family, but again, we can't control that. Am I correct in that, Pete?
Yes, that is correct.
So, but again, I feel it's essential that we have to opaque them windows. I mean, it's basically a medical service, and we're not going to have a medical service wide open to the street. It's not like getting your hair cut. It's a little bit different. It's more personal. So, I mean, how are we sitting with the east side? Because we got a lot to deal with here.
If you look in your report, variances number 5, 6, and 7
Yeah.
would deal with the east side. Number 5,
East. Okay, wait a minute. 5, 6, and 7?
5, 6, and 7 would pertain to the east
East side,
elevation
okay.
when it comes to the eye level signs. Number 5 states, allow the installation of 6 eye level signs on the east elevation.
That would go
That would be stricken because the applicant agreed to meet the maximum of 4 based on the zoning regulations.
So we can cross out 5 if we're going that route.
If the commission agrees that 4 is the maximum amount of eye level signs on the east elevation.
Okay.
Do we have to state that, Pete?
In the motion, you know, you can state, if the plan
Okay.
commission proposes a sign appeal, a variance allowing, and you can go through this list. Number 6 is that 30.7 square foot eye level sign on the east elevation. I specifically included the square footage, so that way we just didn't allow a percentage that they could figure out some squiggly thing, whoever the next creative business that may be there in the future. So right now, if you want to allow that, you would leave number 6 in the motion. Number 7 deals with that corner elevation that shows on the sign. Or in here, I'll bring that up on your screen. Right now, as proposed, it does go 14.3%. I know the applicant did indicate that would be the one that he would remove. But, then the remaining 2 signs should drop it down below that 10% rule. But if you don't want the applicant to go over that 10% coverage rule, you should strike out number 7.
Okay, totally.
Totally, because that one is the one that is allowing that additional
Okay.
coverage.
As long as they meet it.
But keep in mind, if you strike that out, he's not allowed the website, the phone number, or anything on the door.
No, he has the ones on the door, they cannot exceed 10%.
Then why don't we just state it at 10%?
Because that would be meeting code. You're not granting
Oh.
a variance.
Okay.
By him, if the applicant has 4 signs to choose from, I would think the applicant's going to go for the big one. That's a automatic. I'm assuming he's going to go for the one on the door. The question is, and then the forward dental one would be the other one. The question is, what does he do with the remainder? If he spreads, say he takes the new Smiles Welcome, gets rid of it, the other 2 are not going to be a problem. A variance won't be necessary. Right. So going on what the applicant proposes by eliminating that, there would be no need for number 7, granting a variance to go over 14.3 or going to 14.3% coverage.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I would recommend, if that's the route we're going, number 7 could be stricken as well from the motion.
Okay.
So that would leave variance number 6.
Before we leave the east side, does everybody understand that?
So far.
Fred?
Trying to sink in.
I know, it's a lot. So just to rehash it, on the east side, as we're looking at it, and we'll look at it from the door, basically the times and anything on the door would stay. the website would stay. In the middle section, the forward dental would stay or a sign of his choosing. And then the far left one, the opaque window with their content of whatever it may be, would be there to block the patient area. That's what we'd be okay with on the east side. Okay, with that, I'll propose we move to the north side. And Pete, you want to understand, give us what's right and what's wrong with the north side, please.
The north side, you're not allowed to have a wall sign, blade sign, any type of signage on a non-entry facade. So for this elevation to be allowed to have 3 signs, a variance would be required allowing the installation of 3 eye-level signs on the north elevation of the building. All 3 that are on here are less than 10% of that entire glazing, so it meets that rule. And for the linear frontage, you're allowed 1 every 12 feet. 3 signs would be allowed.
Okay. So it's a variance because it's a non-entryway. This is the part of the building that would face basically Drexel Avenue now, or another tenant building, B4 building, or B1 building.
And there will be buildings to the north of this.
Yes. So we either have that section of building completely blank and just glazing, and whatever you look in, you see, or there's something indicating that big smiles are inside.
Well, you can limit it to 1, 2, or 3. Since this is a variance, it would be a variance saying you can install the number that they want. The applicants are proposing 3. It's at the discretion of the plan commission.
Can you pull up the actual building of the north side? Just give us a view of the north side so the commission gets a feel of that, please. So there it is. So there's three window sections there if you'd look.
I'll just flip back to the other one. There's 1 sign on each one of those sections.
Just so the commission's aware, that large section in the middle that's darker is a window section. That's not a wall. So it's really 2 large sections of glazing. That's all glazing. They just don't have vertical mullions in that one particular location.
Thanks for pointing that out, because to tell you the truth, I took it as an opaque
Yeah.
section of wall.
There's 2 sections like that, same with the east elevation. Both those have non-vertical mullions.
Again, I wouldn't be opposed to dressing it up with 2 signs to break up those windows, but I'll go with whatever the council's looking at on this one. Comments? Chris, anything?
Yeah.
Wally?
I just wanted to ask Pete a question. Say they have some special sale or something coming up, do we allow anything like temporary signs? We in our city plan for our signs, we do allow temporary signs for so many days and everything. How does that fit into this area here?
Sure, I can answer that. There's one thing in Drexel Town Square that's unique compared to any other zoning district, and that each tenant is allowed to have 1 A-frame sign to be put out daily, as long as it's brought in at the end of the night. Doesn't require any permits, it's just permitted use by right for that zoning district. And they also do have the opportunity to go for a temporary sign permit. And they follow just like every other business in the city, where you get 1 permit for 1 sign for 15 days. And that sign is up to 32 square feet.
So if you look at what we have here, and then during the year, they could be adding more signs on a temporary basis, on and off, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We're setting a precedent, tonight here, and I'm concerned that we don't go too far out, I'll say on the limb, because we're going to have other businesses coming in. I don't know if they can come back, any ones we've approved already, and ask for a, change in their plan. Is that possible? Or once a plan is set, is that it?
So what you're asking, if the variance is granted, can you come back later to ask for a different variance?
Well, yeah, because somebody else did something, now they want to come back and change change.
A tenant will always have the opportunity to go before the plan commission for a sign appeal. So it can,
Yeah.
be built, I guess, are you trying to
That's why-
say it could be changed?
I do agree, and I kind of said early on, we have to figure out how we're going to approach these, because this ain't the last one we're going to see. And we got a lot of glazing on these buildings, not only on this side, but we got across the street to deal with too. So we got to kind of come up with something, but keep in mind, each tenant use is going to be a little bit different. So you're right, Wally. I mean, it's tricky, this one. We didn't start with an easy one. Yes, sir.
I was just going to note that our space in particular is a corner location, which tends to have two facades.
And I did point that out.
Correct.
It's probably one of the anchors, so it is kind of odd. Chauncey, anything? Fred?
I still believe that we should stick to our standards. We keep changing and we modify, and why do we have standards then if we keep changing them all the time?
Again, that's what we're dealing with today. You're right.
We keep modifying and changing and adding and subtracting, and we start junking up the area. And that's what irritates me a little bit. We have a standard, we should stick to it.
I do have a question, not to jump ahead to the back of the building, because now
Can you stay on the fourth real quick, on the north side? Is everyone okay with 3 signs on the north side like this? Before we jump to the
I don't
back?
think we're there yet.
Okay.
So, no signs? Is it one sign? What's the feeling? Please state your opinion on it. I can't do a straw poll or anything, but you're welcome to state your opinion.
I mean, I will. I believe that we should stick to the rules. The only other question I have is the back of the building, to look at it, because now it won't have a wall sign towards the back of the building, but I don't have an image of what that might look like, to put the logo on that
Well,
area.
Pete
And that
showed
would
it before. If you
the
go
back.
back to the building, keep in mind that's one solid glass wall.
I think she's talking about the west
be-
elevation.
Yeah, the back, where it's named back of building.
I don't have the west elevation.
We got one.
Right, and that's kind of why I wasn't sure what that looked like.
I can help describe it. That section of glazing happens to be at the rear of the building where the small parking lot is. And that section of glazing is actually below one of the decks that are there behind the actual ramp to the basement of the
If
parking
you were in
garage.
the parking lot, to have that name there would
Yes.
identify what is really in that area.
Yes,
So that,
that's really
to me,
the,
that is important and beneficial to the community.
The back of the building?
Right, because if you were in that parking lot, I was just there last night, and you can see all, those are the really wide balconies.
correct.
And
Those
so
are the
it's much
balconies.
neat, Right.
That's correct.
Patients
No, they have to enter from the front, but that's the only lot we've been provided at this point, so that's where all the patients will park. And they'll walk around the
To know
side.
that that's there, that you're in the right,
Yeah.
location.
So they'll park in the rear and then they'll walk along the north elevation and enter the front door.
Which that one's within code, Pete, correct? That's variance 4.
Well, no, it's not in
Number
code because
4.
it's not entry. That's why variance number 4 would
Number
be
4, yeah.
required if this so commission's discretion, if they feel that a variance should be granted. Only way there should be signs according to the code is on the entry facade, period. Everything else on the north and the west elevation is variance requirement.
Yeah, I know that's a hard one. We've dealt with that with these buildings, like over at Buffalo Wild Wings, where you park on the backside and you got to walk around the front, similar to this. So, yeah, we picked a doozy the first time through. So, where are we at? We're on the.
I think if I sense the commission right, the west elevation, there seemed to be a little bit more consensus on than there were on.
I'm okay with the west. I understand that. You have to know.
Good point.
I think you have to identify which business is there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Chocolate Factory has a sign on that side too, don't they?
Yes, they have one in the rear and the front.
They have a wall sign on both the east and the west elevation. They have
Right. So, I mean, it's identified that they're there.
But they enter on both sides, though.
And again, you can see into that window and see it's a food establishment. So, yeah, I don't have any heartburn with the back of the building or the west side, so to speak.
Right, that leaves the west, or the north elevation, allowing any eye-level signs or limiting to 3, 2, 1. That's up to the commission, and then the other one is going back to that large window skin over on the east elevation. Those are the two, I think, that are left for discussion.
I would recommend 0 signs for the north side.
I didn't hear you, what was that?
I would recommend 0 signs on the north.
Well, okay.
Is that per the code, no signs on the side? Okay,
Correct.
that would be my recommendation.
Chris, any,
Does everyone concur?
well, opinions?
I'm concurring with the,
You like
Commissioners,
the
the
no
direction we're
signs
going
and
in, yeah.
sticking with the thing on the north. Obviously, Fred's there. Wally?
I'm there also.
Okay. You're denied on the north end.
So if I'm following along on the scorecard here, number 3 would be stricken from the variance recommendation.
You may have to walk down through these.
Yes, I will once we get
Okay.
through. But as we're slowly tackling each of the elevations here. So the one that remains is the large 30.7 square foot sign on the east elevation. That would be over in this end here. Bring up the graphic one more time just so you can see.
At number 6, or
Yes, this will be number 6.
Okay,
Work in
somehow
with that.
I already had that crossed off, I don't know why.
Well, I brought it up, but I guess we really didn't discuss it. So if I misled you, I apologize. But again, you know where I sit with it. I think we have to deal with this issue. I think it's unique. I don't know how many times it'll come up with other establishments, but we are where we are right now. We don't have a lot of alternatives that I think are better. But
Yeah, my personal opinion is we have no control over it. I feel apprehensive in granting it, not just to you, but to whoever's in that facility. It's large, it has great impact, it's east facing. And I think there's other alternatives to rectify the situation. It's not a do or die. Those are just my opinion.
okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll say it one more time. To me, it's a medical facility and needs to be dealt with. And I understand it will remain with the property, but if they pull out, it becomes a different business. As I said, maybe a boutique for clothing. They're going to want to use that space and not opaque it. So I guess I'm kind of dealing with the here and now, and I'm not fortune telling as to what's going to be there and who's going to want to use it for what. Again, I consider Forward Dental kind of an anchor here on the north end, and I think they have a sizable investment in it. And I think any alternative, shades, blinds, any of that stuff is gonna kind of ruin the look of that Main Street, quite frankly, because whatever they do, they're gonna blank them windows for good, because they have to. It's their business.
If I can ask a question, is it possible to add a clause to the reason behind it, to the code? For our use, it's HIPAA, Health
That is
Information
not,
Protection Act.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to talk over you. For our authority, it is whether or not the variance to the code not based on use. No, just because the rules that you have to follow are not the rules that we have to follow. So even though for you, you have to figure out a way to create that privacy, that is an issue that you have to deal with. It's not a reason for the city to grant it, because the next person may not have HIPAA requirements. And so we can't make, what could appear to be side deals with applicants. You know, it's either we follow the rules, or if we're going to give a variance, it's basically we're looking at number and size based on the rules, not on it's a dental clinic, it's a psychiatrist, or if it's a bowling alley, or whatever you want to come up with. I'm just throwing random things, uses there. It is whether or not there is a reason to grant a variance to the rules in this particular case, and we cannot make a clause saying, well, it's a dental or a medical facility, therefore it's granted.
I think that's our last hurdle. Is this window skin? If I'm correct.
Correct. Someone, right, sounds like there's not consensus at this point. However, maybe we've reached out of the 7, there are 3 that have been discussed. And if someone would want to make a motion, a commissioner could make the motion to approve the following variances for the tenant space located at 7955 South Main Street. 1, allow the installation of 145 square foot wall sign on the north and east elevations of the building. 2, allow the installation of 1 24-inch by 36-inch blade sign on the north and east elevations of the building, and allow the installation of 1 eye-level sign on the west elevation of the building. That would allow the applicant to put 4 signs, long as those 4 signs on the east elevation did not exceed 10% coverage, would allow the applicant to put 1 eye-level sign on the west elevation, would allow a 45 square foot channel letter wall sign on the east and north, as well as a blade sign on the east and north. That would be what would be granted from what I just stated. If that sums up what we have discussed so far adequately or correctly.
You want me to try to make a motion, Dan?
Go for it, Wally.
Well, okay, you're going to have to walk me through this because I know I'm going to screw this up a little bit, so we're going to try to get going.
Okay, we'll do it together.
Okay, here we go, as a
Before you
team.
do that,
Go
just
ahead,
for, just for
Chauncey.
clarity, so with this final sign, so that is acceptable.
Well, it would depend on what Wally would propose, what his motion would be. So if he chooses to include number 6 as part of his motion, then, if a commissioner seconds it, then we'd go to, roll call, and that's how we would go right now. It's up to the commission to make the motion right now. It seems like 1, 2, and 4 were acceptable to the commission. The other, number 5 and number 7 and number 3 were not. And number 6, there seemed to be a little bit of discussion still on there. So it's up to commissioner if wants to be more discussion on that family sign or not. If not, I would recommend making the motion that would include numbers 1, 2, and 4 in your report.
Getting close to my time to retire, I think, from this. Too many years. Okay, Dick will make a motion that we look at variance for.
Wait, one more.
I'm sorry.
Just one question.
Go ahead.
Pete, on 5, if he went down to 4 wall signs, he's okay on the east
He
side.
said he would.
Right, then he would not, by striking that out, he will conform,
go
he'll
to
meet
4.
the code and there's no variance required.
Gotcha.
So he
Okay.
can have
Okay.
4.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure he didn't have to put it in his.
Okay,
Sorry,
Dickman-
Wally.
No, that's okay. I said we're working through this as a team.
Yeah.
remember?
So
Okay.
I could make an attempt to wordsmith the motion for you if you would like.
Okay, let me just say that Dickman's making a motion that we look at a variance based on a sign appeal for the property, for Forward Dental, property at 7979 South Main Street. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay. I would just say the Plan Commission approved the following variances for the tenant space located at specifically 7955.
Whoops. Is that wrong?
There's a little confusion in here. I mentioned it last month.
Oh.
The building, it's at 7979. So in the report, we mentioned 7979, but this is going to be specific to tenant space 7955.
Okay, Dickman will amend, my comments for 7955. Go ahead.
And then you can just read the variances that you believe should be included. Right now, number 1, number 2, and number 4.
Okay, You want me to read them? then?
Yep, you can just
Okay,
read,
number
read them
one.
as is, and then it's up to you how you want to deal with variance number 6, which is that
Number
large
one,
sign.
allow the installation of 145 square foot wall sign on north and east elevations of the building. Number two, allow the installation of one 24 by 36 inch blade sign on the north and east elevations of the building. Number three would now be allow the installation of one eye level sign on the west elevation of the building. And I'm not going to include any more.
All right.
Grillo, second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Sir?
Thank you.
I would suggest if you can brainstorm, maybe get back with planning and run it up the flagpole again and see what happens, if we can come to an acceptable solution for that opaque wall.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, board members.
Thank you. All right, that one took a little bit. Moving right along, 5C, plan review of a site and building and landscape plans for the Dickman Company for a multi-tenant industrial building. Carrie?
Bear with me a moment, my computer screen decided it was
okay.
going to turn off.
Carrie, while you're getting things ready, if the commissioners need a break, please
Dickman
take a couple
Company.
minutes.
For a proposed multi-tenant industrial building at 10450 South Oakview Parkway, which is the parcel that is highlighted in red on your screen right now. This is part of the Oakview Business Park. And the proposal is for a single-story, approximately 133,000 square foot industrial building. This is a concept layout for the lot, including parking on the west and parking on the east for semi-trucks. A little bit more of a detailed site plan for you now on the screen. Zoom in so we can get a little bit better idea. The single-story building has approximately 28 loading docks on the east side of the building. There are 3 larger overhead doors also, which can be modified based on what the tenant usage and needs are. A conditional use permit may be needed in the future depending on what the tenant businesses are. At this time, there are no tenants that are in mind. No signs are proposed at this time. A master sign plan may be needed if the tenant space turns out to have more than 2 tenants. Right now, the building is flexible enough to allow for 1 up to 4. Going back to parking, the minimum required per code is 1 per employee, with the number of employees at the largest shift being covered. Right now, it's anticipated that the shifts would be one shift Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., possibly Saturdays. Approximately 100 employees are anticipated to be on site at this time. That may change depending on the tenant mix as well. 116 parking stalls are provided on the west. Those are general standard stalls. And then on the east, again, we have parking for approximately 40 semi-trailers. The parking on the east for the semi-trailers could be modified in the future should the need for additional standard stalls arise. And if we turn ourselves to landscaping at this time, I should mention that there were a couple of updates to these plans. They were put on your seats and emailed out prior to this meeting. Oh, I'm not actually projecting here. I apologize. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the landscape plan. We have had some discussions about landscaping requirements. This is a revised plan. Staff will continue to work with the applicants to make sure that all concerns are addressed and code requirements are met. There were a couple of comments from the Oakview Business Park Association regarding screening of the semi-trailer stalls on the east. That is a pond that is shown on the east as well. The concern is, however, that there is a public water main in that area, so there are some challenges to ensuring that we have adequate vegetation screening that meets all parties' requirements, and also making sure that we don't interfere with that public water main. So again, staff will continue to work with the applicant on these issues to make sure that everything is addressed properly. Turning to the building itself, the elevations on your screen show what the north, south, east, and west will look like. The main focus should be the north and the west sides, as those are the ones that face the streets. This is a corner lot. The main entrances will be on the west side, as shown. The building itself is proposed to be constructed of precast insulated panels. Tinted windows with some spandrel are proposed, and those are above the 9-foot mark, and that's to screen the ceiling components from the exterior. Rooftop mechanicals are proposed to be screened by the parapets. All mechanicals and utility boxes and transformers must be screened per code, so if in the future the tenant spaces have mechanicals that would be above those parapet roof lines, they would have to be screened. There's one dumpster enclosure that is proposed on the east side of the building attached to it. It's a 26 by 12 that would be utilizing the same precast panel as the building. There is a proposal in the plans for the gates to be made of wood, and staff has made the recommendation that they consider a more durable material, possibly composite, and that's based on some experiences that we've had in the city with the wood panels just not holding up in the winter. No other outdoor storage is proposed at this time. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Sam Dickman Jr. of the Dickman Company for the property at 10450 South Oakview Parkway, subject to conditions 1 through 9. And I will just mention that there is a condition in here for the north facade to have some additional treatments. That was prior to these revised plans, so it will be up to the Plan Commission whether or not there are additional requirements for the north in terms of treatment, or if that condition can be stricken. Mr.
What
Chairman.
is that, Carrie? Which condition? I'm sorry.
The condition for the, condition number 2 specifically.
Oh, 2, I'm
For
sorry. Okay.
additional glazing on the northwest corner.
Okay, thank you.
And again, that was in here prior to receiving these revised plans.
Thank you, Carrie. At this time, would the applicant like to state anything about their building, summarize your project, address the commission? Name and address, please.
My name is Dominic Ferrante. I'm with Brian. We're the builder working for the developer. My address is 3885 North Brookfield Road. That's our company location. I think Carrie summarized it well. I do have a sample board that indicates some of the materials, which and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I guess just condition 2 on the glazing on the northwest
Well,
corner.
we had a different version which we worked with Carrie on, and I think we've addressed it with the windows that we added and the bit of articulation on the facade too. We bumped it out a few feet from where it was before. So we've been working along with planning, and we feel that what we have has addressed that concern.
Thank you. Commissioners? Brad?
Yeah, I have a question. Are you planning on a retention pond to take off the stormwater runoff? Is there anything on your property that, or on this development?
No, it's a regional pond for the park, and we worked with our civil engineer, and the capacity for this particular building is handled in that regional pond.
What about the east side? I'm looking at a berm that kind of block off the trailer parking that you have. Is there any heights of that development or berms so you can kind of shield some of that?
It is a little bit elevated, but we're working within the constraints of the grade ratios that we have to maintain, but we do have a slight elevation there. We have limits too, because it is a water main easement as to what we can do there. But we have increased the landscape on the north and the south, and that's really more the visibility point than it is on the east side.
Chelsea?
In regards to the glazing, there was a recommendation or suggestion to add canopies. Can you provide any feedback on that discussion?
Well, we worked with planning, and we felt that the addition of the glazing and the additional bump out and square footage that we added was a reasonable approach. So we did look at it, but I think we present as a good design.
And Carrie, can you go over the additional glazing that has changed with the printouts we received today?
Sure. If you look at the north facade, the north elevation, and we'll just go to the rendering here. These windows here were added, and this treatment here, this bump out was added following discussions that staff had with the applicant's representatives, as was mentioned. So the additional glazing on this side here, that's what was added to the plans that you received in the email and on your seats today.
However, the canopies were over the entrances.
Yeah, those were just suggestions, ideas for how the building could be dressed up a little bit more, for lack of a better term. It's up to the Plan Commission, and we left it up to the applicant to determine whether or not they wanted to include it. It was a suggestion, it was not a requirement.
So what was the result? Canopies or
No canopies was a result of that discussion.
okay? And also, there are quite a few docks here. Why so many?
For potential users based on previous experience and what the developer and landlord's looking at bringing in as potential tenants, the docks are necessary.
Thank you.
Mr. Dickman?
Carrie showed that drawing with the pulpits, being higher. Was that used to conceal the mechanical devices on the roof?
Yes, combination of concealing mechanicals and offering some kind of aesthetic break.
Okay. And then item 3, it was recommended by staff that you incorporate more durable material for the gate dumpster enclosure. Do you agree with that, or can it be
Yeah,
done?
we don't have any problems working with staff to come up with something a little better than just wood.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on, Wally?
Yeah.
Chris, anything?
Looks good.
Brad? Dawn? Okay, I'm sorry, we do have one comment, Mr. Dagner. If you would, please.
2 of them.
2. Rosemary?
Arden Degner, 8540 South Pennsylvania Avenue. This is a very involved concept. Here it's 116 tenants, and I'm always for safety, particularly when we have snow and ice. And I noticed that a 20-foot easement is given to accommodate sidewalks, and yet they are not shown that I could see on these drawings. Is this going to be planned? And that means that this would have to reach out to the Oakwood Road area. And I did see a listing of an asphalt, must have been on the website, some asphalt that is supposed to meet the sidewalk path. And I would certainly like to see this kind of a development available safely for people to traverse from Oakwood Road into this large, 40 semi-trailer parking stalls. That's certainly going to have a lot of traffic there, and I would suggest that sidewalks be included in this instead of just the easement for it in both directions.
Carrie?
Yes, to address that, there are public sidewalks that were included as part of the public road project, so that's part of the infrastructure that currently exists.
Thank you.
As for where the driveways cross the sidewalk, yes, those are things that we will take a look at, make sure that standards for making sure, or the standards for those driveway crossing sidewalk, there are standards in the code for making sure that we have pedestrian safety, making sure that the traffic is aware that that is a crossing. Those are all good points and things that we are aware of, but the sidewalk infrastructure is there.
Thank you. Rosemary, name and address, please.
Rosemary Anderson, 3920 East Ryan Road. First, I have some questions about, so that I'm oriented, so I know exactly where I'm at. And it looks to me like this lot is directly behind Giefer's farm. Is that correct?
From my point of view, yes.
And then that detention pond would be right there, right?
The detention pond sits on the northeast side of the building, if I'm correct.
Oh, it sits on the east side.
On the
Yeah, it
east
would
side?
sit between that lot and Giefer's farm.
Okay.
Because you guys encase Giefer with, they've got detention ponds on all three sides of their farm now. And then this blue one down on the bottom, is that Chewy's?
That is
Yes, that's Stella
Chewy's.
and Chewy.
Okay, then I've got the right spot. Then right next door, right to the south, that would be the park.
That would be county land.
That's County Park? No, that's city.
No, oh, I'm sorry, that's one, I'm talking about further south. My apologies.
So we're gonna have a city park, and we're gonna have possibly 68 semis coming and going right next door. And then I have some questions that maybe I'm too early in the game for, but if we're gonna allow a building to be built without knowing what's going in there, do we have any control in the future of what is manufactured at that site?
Do we have any ordinances as to what goes in there? Yes, actually, we do. I mean, if they're going to come in here and, I'm being very facetious, but if they're going to come in with radioactive material and things like that, yes, we're going to govern that. But if it's just going to be a typical shipping center or a machine shop, it is zoned industrial. So
Right, it's zoned
they
manufacturing.
are allowed to do that. But I mean, if they need special permits for chemicals or things of that nature, like some of the businesses in, I would have to defer to the assistant fire chief, but then we'd be able to regulate what they're doing.
There are conditional uses, so they would,
Yeah.
certain businesses would have to come back for a conditional use permit. So there are some controls.
And then, is this one of the deals where DOTS will be able to help them find tenants?
Well, typically in an industrial setting, products come in and out by semi, so the docks are desirable for
No,
businesses.
you misunderstood. DOTS, Gary Bellington, will he be looking for clients for these people?
Possibly, he's on the lookout for business always. That's his contract with the city, so he could possibly be involved,
And then this is a TIF district.
correct?
Are we going to deal with any more deals like we just got through with Master Lock?
Well, we're not really here to discuss that, but from what I know, there's no TIF money within this building, to my knowledge. But we're not really here to discuss that now.
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Connie Olson, please. Welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
Connie Olson, 10520 South Howell Avenue. I live across from the Giefer Farm. I welcome the building of this building. I think it's good. I just have one quick question. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful building with lighting, but my concern, is there going to be adequate lighting on the east side where all these docks are? I just don't want it to be, lit up all, it really looks fantastic with all the lighting, but I don't see anything on the back side, the east side. And to me, that's important because even though the Giefer Farm is in between, still, if you're going to have these buildings, I think it's really important to have adequate lighting all the way around because of crime. And I just want to be sure that this is not going to welcome any type of crime because of the darkness behind the building.
No, excellent question, and it is required by code. Actually, electrical code governs that, and they need a certain amount of foot candles per square foot of parking lot. And usually they accomplish that through wall packs. It doesn't look like they're going to put poles back there, but they'll do it by wall packs. They also want to protect their property, and they typically have cutoff shades on these. So our electrical inspector will figure that all out for them and tell them what they need. You know, usually it's like about a 400-watt wall pack on the back there. So
Mr. Chairman, actually what's on the screen right now is the proposed photometric plan, and if the applicant would be able to come up and kind of give a little bit of an overview of where the parking lot lights would be, that might help to answer that question.
I'm Mike Byrne with Bryan Building Corporation, and my address is 3885 North Brookfield Road, Brookfield, Wisconsin. What we added in the back is we have 4 pole lights directly along the east property line, and we have 1 pole light that's on the east property line, and then we have wall packs that are on the back of the building that shine out to give you the photometrics that's shown. And it's all per your code with cutoff at the end of the property lines and that, and they're all LED fixtures.
great.
Okay?
So I hope that answers your question. There will be adequate lighting. So, okay. With that, any other questions from the commission? Okay, we'll look for a motion.
Come on. Oh, you go. Come on.
Oh, you want me to do it, eh? Okay. Bukevich will make a motion that the Plan Commission approve the site and building plan submitted by Sam Dickman Jr., the Dickman Company, for the property at 10450 South Parkview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all fire and building codes are met. 2, that the elevations are revised to incorporate the glazing from the entrance elevation to the west around the northwest corner. 3, that the...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Is that I wanted to get clarification on condition number 2, since that was written prior to these revised plans. Does the Plan Commission feel that that's still valid, or would number 2 be stricken?
I think he clarified, and we can strike number 2.
Strike number 2.
My
Thank you.
mistake. Thank you for pointing that out. So former condition 2 is struck. Condition 2, that the plans are revised to incorporate a more durable material, such as composite, for the gate on the dumpster enclosure. 3, that all revised plans, site, building, landscape, etc., are submitted in digital and paper formats for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 4, that detailed plans for signage are reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to the submission of signed permit applications for tenant buildings. If the buildings are revised to accommodate only 1 tenant with no possibility of future tenants, a sign plan will not be required prior to the issuance of a sign permit. 5, that all mechanical equipment, ground, building, and rooftop is screened from view. 6, that the final lighting plans indicating the luminaire type, pole type, color, and height are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to the submission of building permits. 7, that the stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the engineering department prior to the issuance of permits. And 8, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Yep. Good luck, you guys. Okay.
Moving right ahead, another sign plan review. So we're going to 5D.
This is a sign plan review submitted by Blair Williams of Wired Properties for the buildings at 7979 and 7978 South Main Street. These are the 2 multi-tenant buildings in Drexel Town Square, mixed-use buildings. They are located actually in one of the buildings that we were discussing earlier today, and they are on both sides of Main Street, as highlighted in red on the screen. As you recall, the Plan Commission reviewed and approved a sign program for the Main Street mixed-use buildings on August 23rd of this year. The request before you tonight is for temporary vinyl window clings to per the approved sign program and DTS MUPDD requirements. These will be temporary. These are intended to block the vacant commercial spaces until they are leased out. There are 2 proposed coverings for 2 commercial tenant spaces facing Main Street in the Flair building. And no window clings are proposed facing the parking lot on the east. So we are talking about the 3-story building on Main Street. And there are 3 coverings for 1 commercial tenant space, which is kind of the corner commercial tenant space on the Forge building. That's facing West Town Square Way and Main Street. As you can see on the screen, it's one portion that's facing West Town Square Way on the south, and then because of the entrance elevation on the east, it also faces Main Street. Again, no window clings are proposed facing the parking lot on the west. My understanding, and I can be corrected, please, I believe that this tenant space does not have a window facing the parking lot, so that's not a possibility. To give you an idea of what kind of graphics they're proposing, these are the temporary window clings that were used in another location. They would be modified to Drexeltown Square specifics. This one says the promenade. Obviously, there would be some kind of Drexeltown Square graphic included here with leasing information. We were not able to get a customized graphic prior to this meeting. There's some requirement that we have Plan Commission approval in place before the graphics can be drawn up and things like that. So this is an idea of what it could look like. Per the DTS MUPDD, 1 eye-level sign or graphic per 12 linear feet of entry facade is allowed, as we've discussed earlier. Vinyl on glazing, which includes text, graphics, or patterns, may not cause more than 10% of the glazing to become opaque, and the maximum text height is limited to 5% of the retail storefront. However, recognizing the use of these lifestyle clings to screen interior construction of tenant spaces in other locations, staff recommended as part of the most recent master sign program that the temporary decals be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by the Plan Commission, which is why it's before you this evening. Again, temporary. These are meant to screen the vacant tenant spaces until they're leased. The staff recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign program for the mixed-use buildings at 7979 and 7978 South Main Street, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. Again, we're looking at, signs, but they're temporary. And you can understand the use of that because they're for rentals until something goes in. So we'll start off with Wally.
Yeah, number one, I'm not in disagreeing with, but I don't consider decal shall not be in place for more than 2 years as temporary. I don't know where the 2 years came from. Was that our recommendation?
No,
Pete?
that's actually part of code that
Oh,
basically.
that is the code. Oh,
That's part of our municipal code in a section having to deal with development signage.
okay.
So if the Plan Commission is not comfortable with that 2 years, you can change it. However, the maximum of 2 years was presented as a kind of a way to, a starting off point for a discussion based off of what code says is the maximum allowable.
Okay, when I looked at that, I was thinking, well, I could see, 1 year, then have them come back here and extend it for another year, because at least if there was some progress being made on getting tenants. I would be kind of surprised if they don't have the tenants in place even within a year. In fact, I'd be shocked to tell you the truth. But that's just my feeling.
I agree with you, Wally. I think 2 years is a long time, and 1 year may be adequate.
Except that if they didn't rent it,
Come back here.
you'd come back and, you wouldn't want them peeled off.
Or you could come back, take another year and take a look at it, but 2 years is a long time to leave a building vacant.
They wouldn't necessarily have to take them off. I mean, if they know their expiration is October 2017 or 18, well,
They'll come here.
they can come back in June or January or whatever. You hopefully would never be an issue, but they would know prior to if they would need an extension or not.
I kind of think they owe it to us from the standpoint that if they have some plans, but they're not quite in process yet, and they want to keep it on for another 6 months, if they tell us that, at least I'd feel a lot more comfortable with it.
We
2
can also
years.
make a suggestion that it doesn't say just open-ended 2 years, but you can put decals shall not be in place past December 2017. That gives them a little bit more than a year, but a little bit less than 2 years.
Okay, you want to go to an actual date, you're saying?
Or you could say no more than 1 year from the date of approval.
I like that better.
But again, the 2 years was giving the maximum allowed by code and up for plan commission discussion.
On, you had something, you spoke?
No, I got, love this idea. Absolutely, it's what everybody does. It's to hide, especially for safety reasons, you don't see the construction going on inside. It's great to unveil it when it's all ready to go. Though, being the creative aspect of it, I've gone online just today when reading through this and found hundreds of ideas that would be so much better than these stock images. Very creative ideas. So I'm hoping that the applicant, I'm not sure who the applicant is, where we've seen like local pictures, a football team, or, just so many different varieties where it doesn't look like just a white woman, in all these scenarios. So, I mean, there's just so many things to do. And it would be unique to our environment, and it would be pleasing to look at. And there just is so many creative ones where it looks like it's construction and, it has three-dimensional look and stuff. So I would just suggest that if we could have something unique, you have to pay for it, it doesn't matter, as far as the printing of it. That's what I would just.
We can't really control what's on the picture though, can
No,
we?
can't.
We can't.
Right.
No.
No, so
That
you
was
can make
gonna
a
be my
suggestion,
question.
but
Yeah.
you cannot make a
So-
requirement.
Right.
If you want to speak, name and address. for the
Andrew
record.
Prater, Mid-America Real Estate, on behalf of Blair Williams. And I do take your suggestions. That was going to be my question, though. Was whether or not
Yeah,
that could be
we don't
controlled.
control content. It's just a suggestion.
And the reason why we don't have specific plans, like we mentioned, is we wanted to put this idea in front of the plan commission before spending the money to get these specific plans drawn up. So that's why we're here today.
Chauncey?
So these signs, would they be on every level or just the first floor?
It would be as proposed. So these would be the windows that would be covered on the Forge building. And then these would be the windows that would be covered on the Flair building. These are
Just
only the
those three.
commercial tenant spaces.
Just those three?
That's what's been proposed.
That is correct. These three are the three that do not have tenants currently spoken for. Otherwise, the rest of the buildings are filled. We have commitments.
And is there a distinction on the signs per building? What information
We don't have.
the exact same information?
Well, as far as the pictures, I mean, we'd want to incorporate obviously something dealing with Forge and Flair for the buildings, and then we would want to have our company's, information. So as you see here, Mid-America, Ford Leasing, call, or our website. And then as far as the pictures, we haven't determined yet what those will be.
Well, my only concern is that when those that pass by, they see something different and not the same thing per one different building.
Okay. We can take that suggestion in.
Chris, anything?
I agree with Mr. Dickman on the 1 year recommendation. Come back for.
We hope they're leased in 3 months, so.
So do we.
Yeah, I think they'll be filled before that myself.
Anyone else? Okay, for what it's worth, for me, again, it's temporary. I was actually okay because we had a different situation with the last ones. As far as the design goes, I'm sure they're going to do fine because they want to put their product out there. As far as standards, now we're changing our code to accommodate this for 1 year. This is an active construction zone. I hope you rent it out in 3 months too, and they come down that quick, and you never even have to have the graphics drawn up and put them in. But, you know, the truth of the matter is, as fast as they rent these out is as fast as it'll come down. I would just stick to the code at 2 years and give them that, because they're obviously going to take them down if they can rent. But if you guys are comfortable with one and they got to come back, they got to come back. I'm not going to press the point. But again, the statement's always, we have standards and then we change. And then we have standards and we change. So the door swings both ways. So keep that in mind. So anything else? Okay, with that, motion.
Okay, Dick, Bill,
You're looking at me, Wally.
I know. You're in the wrong spot then.
I am.
I'm just kidding you. Okay, Dick will make a motion, Plan Commission approves the sign program for the mixed-use buildings at 7979 and 7978 South Main Street with the following two conditions. Number one, that the temporary vinyl decals for the windows specified in the submitted plans be removed prior to tenant occupancy, but decals shall not be in place for more than 1 year from the date of approval. Number two, that all signs are reviewed and approved by a plan commission in conformance with the requirements of the approved sign program and the Drexel Town Square Mixed-Use Development District General Development Plan and Regulating Plan.
Chandler, second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Great. Thank you. Good luck, guys. Before I call for adjournment, I just want to thank the commission. This was not an easy task to start out with. Each of these buildings are kind of different. The discussion was really good. Obviously, we worked out a compromise to help that person through. We did ask him to come back, brainstorm, because he does have a dilemma. Now, again, he could put a screen up there or a curtain, and he could have, you know, smile, it's a nice day all over it anyways, and there's nothing you can do because it's portable. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong thing to do, but as I was sitting here, I would suggest they're probably going to come back, Pete. I don't know what the possibility is, but
I think they have to wait 1 year.
1 year.
I believe. I have to double check that, but because you can't just keep asking
I-
for the same
well,
variance and just,
I guess I
unless
would,
it's significantly different.
I guess
and
I'm
that's-
going here because it's not signage, but he could request from the landlord to put in spandrel windows and still make the glazing requirement. Am I correct?
No, we specify in the DTS MUPDD what needs to be clear. Spandrel is a special condition, and it's only allowed on certain facades and with the Plan Commission approval.
Thank you for clearing that up. As I was sitting here, I was thinking maybe that's an out on this. But again, they're going to have to come to something because they are not going to let their patients, you know, people walking by gawking in there. So anyways, but I did want to applaud you guys because I think you did a very good job with it. It's not easy looking at these and trying to get the visuals because we did put the buildings in, much like the docks we just put in. We have no idea who's coming there. So we put it in, and then we have these unforeseen consequences. So I just want to say you guys did a really good job with it. So, and staff also, because it wasn't an easy thing to sort out. And I know how much you enjoy signage, Pete.
Oh, and we're going to have so much more signage in the
So-
future too.
So with that, we'll look for adjournment.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 7:51.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. So that'll do it for tonight's planning meeting.